German Sports of the Oklahoman with our Thundercast. Eric Horn, Darnell Mayberry, columnist Barry Trammell. We're wondering about Russell Westbrook. Will he stay or will he go? Barry, you wrote about that topic today. You compared it to cannibalism. I thought that was a catchy headline. Is it really?
Well, don't trade Russell Westbrook unless you absolutely have to. Don't eat your fellow man unless you absolutely have to. That's the correlation.
Last resort.
It just depends on how you look at it with the Russell Westbrook trade talk. Some people say if he doesn't commit, you got to trade him. I say you trade him only if he commits to leaving. So if there's still an opening, if there's still a chance, you hang on to Russell Westbrook. It's too hard to get those guys like that. So if you've got one, you just clutch and hang on until the last possible second.
Not that either of you guys are experts on this movie, but you know the Dumb and Dumber line, so you're saying?
There's a chance.
So you're saying there's a chance. Is there a chance, Darnell?
Yeah, there's a chance. I mean, but you just never know. You thought there was a chance to keep Kevin Durant, and look where we are now. I just don't think you can risk it. I enjoyed your column today, Barry. I thought it was a great column. I just didn't agree with it. If Russell Westbrook does not give you a commitment that he's going to be here long term, you have to trade him. You can't afford to lose those guys for nothing.
Is the art of persuasion still in Sam Presti's repertoire? It didn't work for KD. Is there a way that if he's non-committal, that the Thunder could persuade Russell Westbrook to stay here?
As you said, there's always a chance. But again, you're in a lot different scenario because Kevin Durant's not here. I think that the persuasion would be a lot easier if you had another top 5 guys next to you that you've been playing with for your entire career, like a Kevin Durant. So I think the powers of persuasion might have diminished a little once Kevin Durant walked out the door.
Okay, let's say he's non-committal. Barry says keep him. You say?
I say trade him.
You say?
Trade him.
I say trade him. As hard as that is to fathom, if this was the first time the Thunder had gotten in this situation, if it was Westbrook ahead of Durant, but I just don't think they can suffer through another thing like that.
And look at their track record. You got James Harden, Jeff Green before James Harden, Serge Ibaka. They traded these guys. Reggie Jackson. They've traded these guys leading up to their free agency. They don't wait. I understand why they did it with Kevin Durant. They were a championship caliber team. It was worth the risk, but you can't do that with Russell Westbrook now.
And on a selfish note, I don't want Russell Westbrook to be traded.
None of us do.
I want to see the Russell Westbrook tour of destruction through the league, particularly against the Warriors. I want to see the I got this, and I want to see Russell Westbrook with this team in his control and what he can get out of these guys the way he did last year. We saw him make these guys better. And of course, it's going to be tough without Kevin Durant there, but I selfishly want to see that on a day-to-day basis.
You're starting to change my mind. Barry.
I just don't understand the risk and reward. The reward for risk is much better now because if you do get something good for him, that's not elevating you to a championship team. The difference playing without Russell Westbrook and no assets coming in and playing without Russell Westbrook and assets coming in is what? The difference between winning 42 and 32. Well, what's the difference in that? Who cares? You might make the playoffs at 42. You get drummed in the first round. So, to me, the whole point of having a basketball team and contending for championships is trying to collect the elite talent. That's how you win. And the best way to get elite talent, I don't think, is to hoard draft picks. It's to keep the great talent that you have all the way to the end.
Your chances of getting elite talent are going to go down if you have Russell Westbrook leave for nothing, because you have a better chance of getting elite talent if you have draft picks going into the 2017 draft that could potentially net you another potential Russell Westbrook or another potential Kevin Durant. We've seen Oklahoma City's track record of being able to attract free agents here. How's that going to look if Russell Westbrook walks out the door for nothing?
Well, it's not going to look good, and it may not look good if he is here. The potential to attract free agents really doesn't matter whether Westbrook stays or goes. They haven't attracted good free agents when they had Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook. So that's sort of nullified. What about the idea, guys, that this sort of so-called I got you tour? Or I got this, not I got you, I got this. Russ goes on one of these rampages, plays with dented faces, plays with all kinds of injuries, does the skip like he did in Washington, and does it through the All-Star break, right up to the trade deadline. Is it possible that could increase his trade value? Is it possible that the time that that they should wait till after the trade deadline? And what's the pros and cons of waiting?
I don't think they should wait. The con is you're going to get a lot less back in return if you have to trade him at the deadline, because everyone in the league then knows that you have to trade him. And I think that that's going to be really troublesome for the Thunder. The pro of trading him now is that a team can get him in the bank early, have him for a full year, convince him, hey, if it's Boston, wherever, the Lakers, here's a place where you want to stay. This is who we are. This is what we do. This is what we're about. You want to re-sign here. Where if you're getting him in February, you don't have as much time to convince him that he needs to re-sign there.
I think one of the pros of trading him now is that you're trading a healthy Russell Westbrook. You're going to have a guy, once he starts the season, that we know Russell Westbrook plays hard, and he's going to go 100% when he's out there. He's not going to have Kevin Durant to take that weight off of him offensively. So you run the risk of having Russell Westbrook pick up an injury midseason, and that diminishes his trade value too.
Barry, what about waiting?
You mean trying to trade him at the trade deadline?
Trying to trade him at the
Well,
trade
I mean,
deadline?
I actually think, RFD makes a good point, which is teams know you got to trade him, but if you go to the trade deadline, you're actually putting some pressure. You've got a deadline on those teams. The pressure goes to those teams, a Boston, a Laker, whoever. They know here comes the deadline. If we're going to do something, we got to do it. So the pressure's both ways.
But they also might know that Russell Westbrook might not want to play here. We don't have to trade anything for him. We can just go out and get him in a couple months as a free agent.
And that goes back to why I wouldn't another reason not to trade him in the first place. You're not going to with his impending free agency. You're not going to get great value. You're not going to get good value for him anyway. Nobody's going to send you the equivalent of Russell Westbrook back. But even more so with him going into free agency, he's got limited. His trade value becomes less.
Yeah, Darnell's scenario supposes that this year, or this 10 months or 11 months before free agency, that you're going to be able to sell him on something. If Russell Westbrook, all the rumors all along, the sentiment was that he wanted to go to Los Angeles. If that's where he wants to go, it sounds like the Thunder's only trading partner could be the Clippers or the Lakers. And what incentive would either of those have to trade for him, knowing that he's likely to want to come home anyway?
And that's the trouble with potentially Boston, who Howard Beck from Bleacher Report reported that would be the most likely trade partner right now. If Boston trades all those assets and he wants to be on the West Coast, in hometown of LA, why would he re-sign in Boston if he's sent there? And why would Boston give up all of those assets, including high draft picks, for Russell Westbrook if he just wants to go back to the West Coast?
I mean, that's my point. That's part of my point is I just don't think people are going to line up, give you a bunch for him. And the other thing I think is this. I'd spend this season, I mean, let's be honest with what happened. I mean, the Golden State Warriors recruited Kevin Durant throughout the year. Now, I'm not saying Steve Kerr or Bob Myers or anybody in management did it, but the players obviously did it. Sell Russell Westbrook on, hey, for the next calendar year, fine, let's identify who we want next summer and let's start recruiting him. Let's show him what we got with the young guys, with Canner and Adams and Oladipo and all those guys, and let's put a bug in his ear. If that's the way the game's going to be played, let's play the game.
I asked a question about Kevin Durant that I never had an answer to. Why didn't he ever just come out and say, I want to be here, I anticipate being here? He never said it. Russell Westbrook, his silence right now is deafening. I mean, he's really, I guess, leaving us to read tea leaves on what he feels, and maybe the Thunder knows. But for him as the leader of this team to not come out and say what exactly he's feeling, what he wants, I think that's a bad sign that I think we should all really take a real hard look at. And Eric is actually writing about it for tomorrow's paper, and it's interesting to see what Westbrook will eventually say and why he hasn't said anything to this point.
Now, there's two differences. One is Durant didn't say that, you're right, but he said a lot of other stuff. Westbrook doesn't say anything. Westbrook is not interested in saying anything between the months of June and October. He doesn't want to talk to anybody about anything. So his silence is deafening, perhaps. It's also standard operating procedure in good times, bad times, no times.
But this is a different time. They've never lost a superstar.
Right.
And now Russell Westbrook goes from being the co-superstar to the superstar. As the leader, if he's the leader that this team keeps saying he is, you would think that he would go out front and say something, and we haven't heard anything.
The one thing we can count on Russell Westbrook is I don't think he's going to change. You know, circumstances don't really seem to bother him. If he plays terrible, if he plays great, he's the same. He's like Jesus. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever.
Russell Westbrook is like Jesus.
In Russell Westbrook.
Eric, what's the question of your story? What are you writing tomorrow? Darnell alluded to. What's the real focus?
Basically, how these guys in the past respond to free agents leaving, whether it's a Damian Lillard or a guy like a Dwayne Wade, how they answer the questions, what's the time frame in which they take to come out and say something, and how they respond to guys leaving. I mean, we had big decisions with LeBron James leaving for Cleveland a year or two ago. You had LaMarcus Aldridge leave for San Antonio just a year ago. And Damian Lillard said it then that he came out and was very candid about some of the conversations he had with LaMarcus Aldridge leading in the free agency, saying that he wasn't pitching this guy. He was just telling him that he'd really like to have him back. Dwayne Wade said he didn't pitch LeBron James. He talked about being a family. So that's another story, but it's also interesting to go back and look and see what these guys said leading into free agency. And we don't know these discussions that Russell Westbrook and Nick Collison had with Kevin Durant sitting down, but it's interesting to go back and look at the history and see what those conversations were like with other high-profile free agencies.
We don't know what kind of decision it's going to be for Russell Westbrook. Kevin Durant stated that it was going to be a basketball decision. And I know asking us to get inside the mind of Russell Westbrook is a difficult task. But, Darnell, what kind of decision do you think? Is it a lifestyle decision? Is it a straight basketball decision? Because if it's a straight basketball decision, some of those places are already blocked off. He's not going to Golden State. He's not going to Cleveland.
Right.
And the basketball decisions in Los Angeles or New York are not so good. The basketball decision in Boston's better.
Yeah, there's only a handful of better situations that he can find himself in if he leaves Oklahoma City, if it's a basketball situation, if it's a basketball decision. The Thunder is actually still a really good basketball team for Russell Westbrook with Steven Adams and Enes Kanter. You got Andre Robertson, Cameron Payne, Victor Oladipo. They've got a lot of young pieces that can grow up and develop around Russell Westbrook. Now, the drawback to that is they've done that for the last 8 seasons. Russell Westbrook might be tired of that. He might want to go play with some other veterans. But if he's going to go play with someone else, that's not going to necessarily put him any closer to a championship. And that's what I wonder with Russell Westbrook right now. How bad does he want to stay in that championship hunt? If he does, it might be better off staying with the Thunder and trying to build back to that as opposed to going somewhere else, because it's just not there right now for him.
And I wouldn't even say necessarily that a situation like Boston is a better basketball situation than a situation in LA. Because if Boston gets Russell Westbrook, they're going to have to give up a bunch that would deplete that team in terms of making them a contender in the East. So is that really a better basketball situation in Russell Westbrook than staying here with the Thunder?
How about, is it the Lakers? I mean, does he, and how interested is Russell Westbrook in babysitting? I mean, that's a real question. Is he interested?
What kind of babysitter is Russell Westbrook
Well,
is the better
That
question.
seemed like you'd be a great one.
Adventures in babysitting.
We might find that out this year.
Yeah, in Oklahoma City. That's interesting. Does he want to babysit the Thunder? Does he want to babysit?
D'Angelo Russell?
I got to believe D'Angelo Russell might not be there to babysit. They might just
They
let
might
him
send him back this
make
way.
a latchkey kid and let him play out in the street. But what the Laker question, that seems to be what's always loomed for Russell Westbrook. If you talk to the folks who didn't think he was a point guard, who didn't think he was ever going to stay, it was always he's going to end up with the Lakers. That's the team that, more than anything, has the need for Russell Westbrook. Barry, how do the Lakers loom in this?
Well, I think they're an interesting team because, to me, they have started up the hill. Now, they bottomed out maybe this past season, but climbing up the hill, they actually have 2 or 3 decent young players when you talk about Russell and Ingram and Julius Randle. But they're a long way from title contention. If you go play for the Lakers now, you'll be in the spotlight because it's the Lakers. But you're not close to being any kind of championship team. And you don't know, Russell Westbrook doesn't know if this is even a possibility in Lakerland because of the change in ownership. It's been a dysfunctional franchise for 3 or 4 years since Dr. Jerry Buss died, it's been sort of a chaotic franchise. That's not the kind of thing that appeals to most serious-minded NBA players. So I'm less optimistic. I actually think that Westbrook would be more in tune to try to get on with the Clippers. If the Clippers wanted to make a change, Chris Paul will be a free agent next summer. But so I'm not big on the Westbrook to Laker. I think Russell wants to win on some level right now. I don't think he wants to get on the good ship Lollipop.
I think it's important to note for Thunder fans that if they do trade Russell Westbrook, it's a clear indication that he didn't want to be here. You've seen it before. Again, Jeff Green, Reggie Jackson, James Harden. They don't trade guys when they feel like Serge was maybe a little different. I don't know. But definitely Reggie Jackson, James Harden, and Jeff Green. I mean, they turned down money that was clearly on the table. The Thunder offered a fair price for those guys, and they turned it down, and they ended up trading them. So I think if they trade Russell Westbrook, Thunder fans just have to know that the Thunder was basically forced to do it because Russell Westbrook, in some way or another, made it clear to them that he didn't want to be here.
Okay, we wrote right after the draft, right after the big Serge Ibaka trade, that it was clear that he wanted out. He was concerned about his touches. So, and yet the Thunder got in the Serge Ibaka trade a lottery pick, a former lottery pick, and Ilyasova. That was a pretty good haul. Everybody just sort of celebrated that haul. Can somebody explain to me why they would get less for Russell Westbrook? Explain that.
Because you would have to give up more, and that's to Barry's point. You would have to give up even more for a 4 or 5, whatever time All-Star, MVP caliber player, a scoring champ in Russell Westbrook. You would have to give up more than what Orlando gave up for Serge Ibaka, and I think that's the hesitation on another team's part.
Would you be satisfied if there was a comparable return on Russell Westbrook to what the Thunder got for Serge Ibaka, Eric?
I just don't know if there is a comparable return. I mean, this is a guy in Russell Westbrook who, have we been able to put a limit on what he's capable of as a basketball player yet? So,
I'm just saying, if they got back for Russell Westbrook equal to what they got back from Serge Ibaka.
Well, wait, you're the same guy who talked about Steven Adams being equivalent to James Harden eventually, right? You said, we're going to look back on that trade and say Steven Adams for James Harden straight up would have been a good deal.
Well, if he
Just
stays.
look at the James Harden trade. Look at what they got for James Harden. A lot of people killed it at the time, but Steven Adams is blossoming into a nice player. We still don't know who or what Alex Abrines is. They got a lot of pieces. I think if they have a trade like that for Russell Westbrook, where they get draft picks and pieces, then I think you have to live with it. It's better than the alternative of losing him for nothing.
I agree from the sense that you have to throw in picks, and they have to be of the lottery caliber, high lottery, in order for you to get anything close to an even return to Russell Westbrook. Let's say you hypothetically had the same pieces you had in the Serge Ibaka trade. You had an athletic 2-guard, you had a draft pick, and you had a veteran. I want an additional draft pick and what's going to be a top-heavy class, or not a top-heavy class, just a great class overall in 2017, so I can have the potential of drafting another Russell Westbrook or another Kevin Durant.
Barry, given this talk that, the leverage clearly is not in the Thunder's favor, given this idea that Westbrook's silence is out there, if you could get, and I don't know what it would be, if you could get the equivalent of a Victor Oladipo, of a lottery pick, and of a rotation player in return right now for Russell Westbrook, would that change your mind at all?
No. And Boston could do that. Boston could give one of those Brooklyn picks.
Marcus Smart.
And could throw in Marcus Smart.
And Crowder.
Yeah, although I don't think they're going to let go of Crowder. They love Crowder. But
Avery Bradley.
Isaiah Thomas. If they don't need a point guard if they get Russell Westbrook. So Isaiah Thomas, Marcus Smart, and a lottery pick. I would not do it because while lottery picks are great and everybody hoards them, the idea that a lottery pick is going to produce another Russell Westbrook or another Kevin Durant is a long, long shot. For one, God doesn't make too many of those players. So you'll get a good player probably with a lottery pick, and it might be the 3 pick, it might be the 9 pick, you never know. But that haul is not going to get the Thunder down the road towards a championship. I mean, it'd make them a pretty good team. There'll be a Utah or somebody. But, you know, for all the inroads, people talk about Utah, how much inroads. Denver's the perfect example. It's hard to imagine a better trade than Denver got for Carmelo Anthony. But all that made was Denver was pretty competitive for 2 or 3 years, and then off the cliff they go. You got to have the elite talent to challenge for an NBA title, and to me, that's what has whetted Oklahoma City's appetite right now. Do we want to go be Salt Lake City? Do we want to go be Milwaukee? To me, I'd roll the dice with Russell Westbrook.
Okay, let's say they let it ride. They let it ride. What a season that could be. I mean, I got this for a whole season. You talk about going from town to town and the interviews with Russell Westbrook. That's all for you, Darnell. All the people who are going to get the skunk eye when they start asking about free agency. All the issues. What does the Thunder need to do? What else does the Thunder need to do this summer if it's going to let it ride? And that means try to convince Russell Westbrook to stay. Salary cap is what it is. What kinds of things, Barry, do they need to do in preparation for the let it ride season?
It would help if they could keep Dion Waiters at a relatively small price. I don't, not $18 million, just something along those lines. $17 million. That's too much. But if you're talking about $12 million or so, well, then you got to, Dion Waiters enhances that roster quite a bit. So to me, that's a good start. If you can keep Dion at a good price, and frankly, the odds are getting better that that's possible.
Okay, we'll take some questions from readers. Denver from Choctaw asked, if Westbrook is traded, how many years do you predict until the Thunder would be contenders again?
I thought we were out of the prediction business.
Barry's out of the prediction business.
I'm out of the prediction business, but I don't know, it's double-digit years. I mean, what makes the Thunder think that they got something magical where they can be contenders again soon without Westbrook or Durant?
Barry, I think your premise is flawed in the sense that you're presuming that people want to come play with Russell Westbrook. How do we know that other stars want to come play with him? He's a shot-happy, shoot-first point guard who is a questionable teammate. I'm not going to say he's a bad. I'm not going to say he's a bad teammate, but he's a questionable teammate. Ask Thabo Sefolosha. Ask these guys he's yelled at time and time again. Are we sure people want to come play with him?
And again, as we've seen, the Thunder has not traditionally brought in these free agents, and they built their team throughout the draft. So I think that if you do make a move and you get assets to get additional draft picks that could give you a chance at getting another potential Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook, even if it's not that caliber of player, because let's face it, not many of those come around in a generation, you got to be able to trust that you can build through the draft because you haven't been able to trust your free agency.
Here's my question for you, Barry. A year from now, okay, we're going to play Mike's game, we're going to let it ride. A year from now, Westbrook walks for nothing. What are you sitting up here a year from now saying if they lose him for nothing?
I'm going to say, well, you guys get your wish because the Thunder's headed for the lottery and everybody's all after these lottery picks.
Remember
And
when
you
we
don't
used to-
have one.
Well, you'll have
you won
one. You'll be
45 games or
You're going to
so.
have about 4 in a row in the next 4 years.
Yeah, but you could have went into next season with 1 or 2.
So so what? So you can be Utah. You can be Utah a year earlier.
Darnell, did you enjoy covering the lottery?
It was actually fun. We sat on a studio similar to this in the old building and
Jelly
did the
beans.
Jelly Bean Lottery.
The Jelly Bean Lottery. Speaking of the Jelly Bean Lottery, here's an old friend, March Mimic, asking, how about that Howard Beck story where rival GMs saying Westbrook would sooner rather be traded, that he would be traded sooner rather than later? He's asking, how do we determine what we publish in print and online? Well, I guess that's a question for me. And Darnell, because Darnell makes those decisions too. We publish online, we share what other people are reporting. We think Howard Beck is certainly a credible source. He was at the New York Times before Bleacher Report. Bleacher Report's done some really good work. Howard Beck's made a career out of doing good work. So he's a reputable guy. He's out there in Las Vegas where all the league is centered right now. What we do with it in print, that's sort of the thought of the people reporting it. And we're not out there, so it's difficult to get the kind of sources. Barry wrote on the topic today and turned that sort of in. You were going to write about that anyway. Howard's Howard's report just sort of made it more timely. Is that right?
Yeah, and here's the truth. You hear everything from everyone. I mean, Howard Beck's very reputable. So is Adrian Wojnarowski. He reported a few days ago that Russell Westbrook's very open to staying in Oklahoma City and is sort of excited about leading the team and those kinds of things. You don't know what to believe. The truth of the matter is, you shouldn't believe anybody. You shouldn't believe what the players say. Your friend Kevin Durant taught us that. General managers, they're telling these guys, not because they're bosom buddies, not because they grew up on Elm Street together. They're telling them that because they like to work the angles. People are telling general managers saying Howard Beck, telling Howard Beck, hey, they're going to trade him. That gets the market going. That flushes anxiety. That helps the whole trade machine. Somebody, an agent, is where Adrian gets his information from. Agents, telling Adrian for their own specific reasons. So the truth of the matter is, it's hard to believe anybody. You just report what people say and don't put a lot of stock in it.
Eric's writing about this for Sunday. Question from Steve and Edmond. What will our starting lineup be? I think ours, not ours, right here. What's our starting lineup? But what's the Thunder starting lineup? Let's assume Westbrook is here on opening night. What's the starting lineup?
Well, obviously Westbrook at point guard. I would imagine you put Victor Oladipo at shooting guard. You would have, I think you put Andre Robertson at small forward or shooting guard. I mean, that was kind of an interchangeable position for the Thunder last year, and Billy Donovan kind of said that was a fluid thing in terms of shooting guard, small forward. I wrote about Ersan Ilyasova being a potential starter at power forward. I might be kind of wavering on that. Maybe put an Enes Kanter out there. But I think Enes Kanter was really comfortable in his role off of the bench, and he was one of the best 6 men in the league last year. And they're going to need that spacing on the floor with a potential three-point shooter in Ilyasova. That Serge Ibaka's not there anymore at the power forward position.
How do you guys differ there?
I like his starting lineup. I like Oladipo, Robertson, Ilyasova, and then Adams. My question is, do you know something that we don't know? Did you get a call from anyone in particular saying, hey, think about it this way, that make you waver on the Ilyasova at the 4 spot?
Well, I just think of the Kanter-Adams combination as being something that could really just hurt people early on in games and late in games in terms of that starting lineup and the chemistry that they're building. But I also think that it puts a lot of stress on Adams to have him having to account for all of Kanter's defensive deficiencies. So it'll be interesting to see how he starts the season defensively.
Barry, how do you differ?
You've got a lot of options. There's a lot of options here. I'm not crazy about the idea of making Enes Kanter your space creator. The league's best offensive rebounder. You want him 22 feet from the basket. Doesn't make a lot of sense to me. If Dion Waiters comes back, I'm sort of a proponent of going with a 3-guard lineup, messing with teams. Waiters, Oladipo, Westbrook. Those are 3 athletic, physical, offensively efficient guards who are defensively versatile. I mean, they can't guard Kevin Durant for long stretches.
It'd be fun watching Dion Waiters try.
But it would be fun watching those guys. We know Westbrook and Waiters like challenges.
Yep.
Now, I don't know about Victor Oladipo, but
He does.
well, there you go. And here's the other thing about it. Even if you have trouble matching up with taller wingmen, those taller wingmen got to guard one of those 3. So to me, that creates an interesting situation. You could also go with Anthony Morrow. He get killed on defense, but he'll space the floor. And he can score. If Anthony Morrow, he's like Enes Kanter. If Anthony Morrow plays, he scores. And this team might need some offense. So, but Kanter and Adams have to end up playing together. Whether they start, finish, in the middle, doesn't matter. They're 2 of your 4 best players. They're going to have to play a lot together. You're going to have to live with it.
We talked about Westbrook ad nauseum, and we will continue to talk about Westbrook. Last question. This comes from James and Lawton. Is Blake Griffin to the Thunder a long shot?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Long shot. First of all, there's no reason to think Blake wants to come home. He likes the LA deal. 2, there's no reason to think that the Clippers are trying to get rid of him. I mean, he's been a great player for them. They've had some issues and things, but he's a superstar and it's been great for the Doc Rivers and those guys. And 3, you'd have to have a deal where Blake wants to be here, and I assume I assume it might involve a trade situation with Westbrook going out there. So it seems like a tough puzzle to piece together.
Can you think of a scenario where it would happen, Darnell?
The only thing that I would think of is that the Clippers have pretty much plateaued. You know, they're not getting any better than the 4th, 5th seed in the West. They're not contending for championships. And Doc Rivers, as the coach and GM, whatever you want to call him, he might have a decision to make in terms of what we do with this roster. And Blake Griffin is your biggest chip in terms of trading something to get something back and starting not over, but starting different, doing it a different way. And I think if he feels like they have plateaued and they can't go any farther with Blake Griffin and DeAndre Jordan and Chris Paul, then I think that they could entertain trade options. And I mean, there was a report today that Boston is interested in him. I think that could just be smoke, but that's the only scenario I see the Clippers trading him.
What about a league-altering trade?
Uh-oh.
With Chris Paul going to Cleveland, Blake Griffin coming to Oklahoma City, Russell Westbrook going to the Clippers, and a bunch of draft picks, lottery picks coming to Oklahoma City.
You've been spending too much time on the trade machine.
Who's got
Not enough time,
Who's got
actually.
lottery picks in that group?
Well, none of them. The Boston's.
It had to be, might have to be a 4 team.
What's
or a
Kyrie
5
Irving
team.
got to say about all
Yeah.
this?
Might have to throw another team in there. Might have to throw Boston in there too.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to throw Boston
Yeah.
there. Kyrie Irving to Boston, lottery picks to OKC.
You have to call LeBron and see if he wants that to happen too.
If you're going to trade a superstar, it's good to get one back. And if someone wants to toss in lottery picks, that's the best scenario I've heard.
You guys, by the way, are all lottery picks. And that's all for this edition of Thunder Thursday. But you can stay with the best coverage team any day on News OK and every morning in the Oklahoma.